Awesome. All right. Welcome, everyone. So where we're going to be picking up today is at the very, very bottom of page 64. And so we're right in the middle, well, not right in the middle. We just started the fourth step. And just to do a little bit of review for anyone that's new, anyone that's just joining. One, welcome. So glad you're here. And you might be like, uh-oh, I joined for step four. Oh, not cool. Yes, cool. We're gonna have fun. So first things first, if I gotta write an inventory, what do I need? I need a notebook and a pen. You can stay sober if you write with pencil, but I've just found pen to work a lot better. So you need a notebook and a pen. And what we're going to do, this is a good size notebook. It's safe. Yeah, Candace has got one. She's writing that inventory, taking names, kicking butt, doing all that. Uh, so what we got here, it's about A4, so regular size, big notebook. Get a big notebook. It says 80 pages. 80 might not be enough. I might need more notebooks if I only, and you might be like, girl, what? What? Bear with me. I got you. So what we're going to do, we got our notebook, we got our pen. And also, by the way, if you came to the rooms, a 12 step, and you're like, man, my life is unmanageable, and like I'm falling apart, and what will sneak up on you is a love for stationery. I'll let one day I'm drinking, I'm smoking crack behind a dumpster. The next I'm like, listen, let me tell you about this pen. Oh, it's got a lovely flow. So one of my tricks is get a pen that you like writing with, because we're gonna be doing some writing. But before we do any writing on our fourth step, we always want to start with a prayer. And that prayer can be any prayer that comes to mind or comes to heart. You could say the third step if you wanted, but something like, God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, I ask that you guide me as I go through this inventory. Help me to be fearless and thorough. I like to add, God, I pray that you would guide my heart, guide my mind, and guide my pen. May I see the truth about who I really am. Whatever you want. And then we're going to write. And when we're done writing, it can be really helpful to say a prayer. Something like, again, you want to use a 7-step, girl, do it. You want to do whatever prayer you want to do, serenity, heck yeah, do it. But it could be something like, God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, I ask that you would help me to leave the thoughts and feelings and emotions of this fourth step contained within this notebook. Help me to go out and be of love and service to the people around me. Something like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to draw lines. Woo! Let's start with lines. And a lot of people, when we come to the rooms at 12 step, man, we're scared. We're scared. Now, I won't ask for a show of hands, but most of us here, we're afraid of the fourth step. And all I'm saying is if we're showing up and doing lines, well, I wasn't as scared of doing lines before. You know what I'm saying? I had no problem doing lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw one line about horizontally across the page. So flip it in half in two sections and 2 lines up. And what that creates is 3 columns on top and 1 nice big column at the bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flip the page. And if you're a big loopy writer, I'm a crazy person, so I have tiny, tiny writing. But if you're a big loopy writer, you might want to leave the next page blank. And then you're going to draw 1 line across the page and 2 lines up. And you are going to do that on 50 to 100 pages. And we're drawing the lines. Now, again, you're scared of doing inventory. Wasn't afraid of doing lines before. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we're just diving into some old behavior. And I will let you know it's an easy way to start. And there is spiritual value in drawing out those lines. And that page format where we have 3 columns on the top of the page and 1 big column at the bottom, we're going to use that same page format all the way through our resentments, our fears, and our sex conduct. So really, just like back in the day, we can't do too many lines. All right, some of you guys know what I'm talking about. Woo! All right, so once we have that done, we are going to dive into resentments. Now, we were reading about this last week, but I'll just kick it off and we'll kind of do some review. So it says, bottom of 64, resentment is the #1 offender. And when we look at the word resentment, a resentment is a refeeling of a negative emotion. the etymological origins, because again, I'm super fun at parties and I love to talk about etymology. Uh, the etymological origins of the word resent, it goes back to French, which is a refeeling. So it doesn't matter if it was 2 minutes ago or 2 years ago or 20 years ago, it is a refeeling of a negative emotion. And it says it destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it, which is to say from resentments, stem all forms of spiritual disease. So from a single resentment can all forms of spiritual disease sprout. For we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. Now, for those that have just joined the study for the first time, and maybe this is why I felt called to do a bit more review than I might normally. When we talk about being physically ill, what we are specifically referring to is the allergy of the body. What happens to me once I take that drink, or once I take that drug, or I take that, or engage in that addictive behavior? You guys know what I'm saying? What happens once I start? And if what happens to me is once I start, I cannot control the amount that I take, that I need more, and the more that I do, the more that I need to do, that's the allergy that I can't control it. When we talk about being mentally ill, what we are talking about very specifically is the obsession of the mind. You see, the allergy of the body, what that means is I take that first drink, I take that first drug, or I engage in that first addictive behavior, and that thing inside of me sets off and I need more. And I cross lines in the sand I said I would never cross. I do things I said I would never do. I hurt people in ways I never wanted to hurt people. And I drag myself up off the bathroom floor and I say, I'm never going to do it again. And the obsession of the mind happens when I am sober. The obsession of the mind is that thought that says, this time will be different. Nobody will ever know. I just got to get it out of my system. You know, my problem was drinking, but I can smoke crack like a lady. Pinkies up. It looks like a thought that is on me all day. Take a drink, take a drink, take a drink. Until what little willpower I was able to muster gets eroded away. But it also looks like a case of the suddenlies. I'm out there living my life and I got a drink in my hand or a drug in my mouth and I almost don't know how it happened. It also looks like the F it. F this, F that, F you, F it. I'm getting smashed. I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I get loaded? That is the obsession of the mind. And you see, those are the two symptoms that diagnose this illness. See, the allergy of the body compels me to continue against my will. And the allergy of the body means that I can never, ever safely drink or use mind-altering substances again. But the obsession of the mind means I will. So it says, for we've been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. And that is the spiritual malady. And that is what we treat in 12 steps. And we treat that with the spiritual awakening. It says when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. And that is the order. I treat the spiritual malady. I treat the emptiness. I treat the loneliness in the depth of my soul. I treat the screaming that's coming from inside of me. You guys know what I'm talking about? You know that anxiety where it feels like somebody's stabbing your shoulder blades? I treat that. And I treat that with the spiritual awakening. And how I get the spiritual awakening is through the 12 steps. And when that happens, the obsession of the mind leaves. That's the order. I treat the spiritual first. The obsession of the mind leaves. And when the obsession leaves, I have no reason to take that first drink. I take that first drug to engage in that addictive behavior, whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study. There is no reason for me to do it. And as a result, I don't. And I don't set off the allergy. And that's what we're here to do. So it says, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper, pen to paper. So that's what we got to do. And it says, we listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. And that is our column 1. Now, I'm just going to do the share screen because, might as well. So in column 1, what we're going to do is we're going to put one name of one person or an institution or a principal. Now, we spoke about this last week, but what it looks like typically is we write down mom and then we flip the page, we write down dad, we flip the page, we write down our ex, flip the page. You guys know what I'm saying? We then the other ex, then our boss, then our coworkers, then then our sponsor, right? And so we write a list of the people that we resent, and that can be any person that we know, came into contact with, family, not family, children, pets we can resent, institutions or companies, organizations, government, political organizations, political systems, hospitals, doctors, the legal system. Principles can be things like God. If I got a God resentment, this is where I put it down. God, flip the page. If I resent a religion, put it down, flip the page. If I resent, by the way, an institution, if I resent a 12-step fellowship, I write it down, I flip the page. If I resent a meeting, flip the page. If I resent page, flip the page. If I resent the page by page big book study, that's not this one, that's a different one, flip the page. If I resent the New Light big book study, write it down, flip the page. By the way, if you're wondering, my name is spelled with an I because I have not overcome selfishness, self-centered. We got an I right in the middle of that page. We write it down. Principles can also be things like death, heaven, hell, adultery, sin, things that maybe don't have religious connotation. So it could be old guiding sayings like children should be seen and not heard, or good girls do this, or a real man looks like this. It can be things like having to be honest, having to be open, having to be willing, having to make amends, having to write inventory. Yes, we can write inventory on having to write inventory, having to make amends. Those are all examples, and I spoke about a bunch more last week. And so that is our column one. And the biggest thing is what we want to do is one column at a time. So we want to go name, flip the page, name, flip the page, name, flip the page, name, flip the page. And we want to get all of our column one done. And when all of our column one is done to the best of our ability, we don't edit. If a name comes to mind or if it comes to heart, we write it down. We don't debate. Doesn't matter if we feel like we've forgiven them. Doesn't matter if we don't want to write it down. Write it down. Here's my experience. There is absolutely no harm. The only harm that can come possibly from putting a name or doing a resentment for someone is it would waste 10 minutes of your day. Literally, it would take maybe 10 minutes. And from that, you will have more experience to help others. You will see more clearly the stuff inside of you that's blocking you from this power. So the only downside is like 10 minutes wasted. But there is tremendous value in leaving it off. Tremendous danger, tremendous harm in leaving it off and not writing it down. So do not self-edit, just write it down. So column 2 is the next line. It says, we asked ourselves why we were angry. So column 2, why am I resentful? Now here's the thing. On page 65, it gives us an example. And in the example, it doesn't got more than 15 to 19 words. Now I don't hold sponsees to that. I don't make them count and do that. But I'm saying do it point form. Point form and be petty. Be as petty as you really are. You want to use foul language? This is the only place where we get to use foul language in the whole deal. So you want to use it, you want to use a bad word, boom, write it right here. Be point form, be petty. And we get it out. And then one column at a time. So we column 2 for mom, flip the page. Column 2 for dad, flip the page. Column 2 for the ex, flip the page. Column 2 for the other ex. Column 2 for my boss, flip the page. And when all of that is done, we go to column 3. Now, for me, it says, okay, so it says, in most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambition, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burnt up. To be sore is to be hurt, and to be burnt up is to be angry. And so a lot of people take their third column from the bottom of page 64. And I'll be honest, it's not a big deal if that's where you get it from. You will stay sober if you get it from the bottom of 64. But for me, where I get the third column from is the top of 65. because at the top of 65, it says on our grudge list, we set opposite. And that to me feels like the directions. And also, again, I want to point out, why am I so big on doing one column at a time and not going across and not trying to do one whole resentment at a time? Well, the first is because that's what the book is telling me to do. It says we listed people, institutions, and principles with whom we're angry, period. New sentence, new idea. We asked ourselves why we're angry. And now we already have this grudge list going. So we're going to then put we're then going to put what was affected. And so what I've also found is a lot of times we're afraid of the emotion and the feelings that might be brought up in the resentments process. And what I found is doing one column at a time takes a lot of that emotion out of it. We're not avoiding our feelings, but it helps us to be practical and not drown. And that's also part of why I'm big on point form in that second column. So I'm not drowning in the resentment. So this is where I get my column 3 from. But if you get it from the bottom of 64, you're right, I'm wrong. It's all good. It's all good. All right, so on our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem? So my self-esteem is how I feel about myself. So if the resentment made me feel small, made me feel little, made me feel unwanted, unworthy, unimportant, I can write self-esteem. It goes on to say our security. And I found it helpful to break down security into 3 types of security. So if you are like, girl, I can't give up my column 3 pocketbook, don't worry, I got you. So it can affect our physical security. So did the resentment make me, was I physically harmed, threatened, or did I physically feel unsafe as a result of this situation? If yes, I just write physical security. And then my emotional security. The emotional security is, did this resentment, did the situation make me feel, was I emotionally hurt, threatened? Did I feel emotionally unsafe? If yes, I just write emotional security. Did it affect my financial security? That's the dollar bills, y'all. I say that I'm Canadian. We have loonies, and that's the Looney Toonies, homies. That doesn't rhyme. Our money's fun. We got our dollar coins. Ooh, they got little birds on them, and then our $2 coins are called toonies, and they got polar bears. They got 2 of them. Basically, if you're not from Canada, you probably thought I've absolutely had a stroke and lost my mind at this moment. You know what I mean? What is she on about? So if it affects my financial security, did they steal from me? Did they take my money? Did it affect my job? Did it affect my ability to make a living? If so, I write financial security. Then it says ambition. And my ambition is my desire to go and do things in the future. So if I had a teacher that was mean to me, if I had a teacher that belittled me and berated me, maybe that affected my ambition to try in school. Maybe if I had a home group that wasn't nice to me, or if I had a sponsor that wasn't really helpful, maybe that affected my ambition to work the steps or work with others. So that's what ambition is. And then it says our personal or sex relations. So my personal relations, did this resentment, did the situation affect my relationship with non-romantic people, like non-romantic partners? If yes, I just write personal relations. And if it affected my relationship with somebody that I wanted to engage with romantically, I can write sex relations. Now, the biggest thing that I do with column 3 is, if it's true for you, it's true. If it feels like it affected your self-esteem, write it down. And also for sex relations, I don't need to be in a romantic sexual relationship with the resentment for it to affect it. Let's say I have a boss that's making me work overtime, and I'm spending all my time at work, and my partner, my spouse, is feeling neglected. My resentment to my boss could affect my sex relations. And so many of us are affected by, our parents and watching, how they engaged in romantic relationships. And even if we're a teenager and it's like, Mom, why won't you let me date that guy that's too old for me and is a whole lot of trouble? Oh, that affects my sex relations. So that's again an example of how it. Some of you know what it's like to be a teenage girl. Some of you guys know, Mom, why can't I spend time with the giant red flag? Some of us have not outgrown that. I'm pointing to me on that one. But so what I'm really trying to do in the third column is I am trying to see the depth of the resentment. So the more areas of my life that are affected, the deeper the resentment. And in fact, at the start of the book, man, I'm often going to have what I like to call a full house, which is it affects all of them. Now, if resentment is the number one offender and it destroys more people like me than anything else, the deeper the resentment, the deeper the need to be free of it. And the third column for me is just a sign of the depth of the resentment. And it can give me an idea of what extra spiritual elbow grease I might need in order to be free of it. So what I will do is I'll stop the share. Hey guys. And it says we're usually as definite as this example. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to break down the example right now. What I like to do is I like to come up with a fourth column for the example. So we're going to skip over it and we're going to come back to it. But I want to point something out about the example. Whether you take your third column from the bottom of page 64 or the top of 65, or if you're cool like Terry and you do extended third column work, heck yeah, pew pew. What you will notice is that the example on page 65, it's different than both. And so if you're one of those people, you're like, why is it different? I don't know. You know why? You know why? Because honestly, there are clear cut, precise directions, and there's a little bit of wiggle room. Y'all know what I'm saying? There's a little bit of wiggle room. It's okay if you write pocketbook and I write financial security. It's okay if I write self-esteem and you write pride. It's okay. It's okay. There are clear cut directions, and I don't need to get drowning in my perfectionism. I know that nobody else can relate to that. It's just me over here, and you might be like, girl, you perfectionism? You disaster factory over there? Yeah, I'm a dichotomy. I can't say a walking dichotomy because I don't do that. But I'm an enigma. Alrighty, so let's go to the very bottom of page 65. Very bottom, page 65, it says, we went back through our lives. So it's not just looking at the period of when we might have been drinking or in our active addiction, whatever that might have been. It is through my whole life, from before I was born until 5 minutes ago. Put it down. It said nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. So thorough. Oh, Rod's got a definition. Exhaustively complete. Which in my brain, I know I read it. You guys all heard me say it like it was magically delicious, like it's Lucky Charms. It's thoroughly complete. It's magically delicious. But here's the thing. If you want the marshmallow bits, you've got to get to that fourth column. Yep, I'm as surprised as anyone else that I made that reference. So what matters is that I be thorough, that I be honest. And also, one of the things that I'm going to share is it does not take long to be thorough. It does not take long to be honest. And I'm not giving anyone any guff because I know. I saw Brian look at Kathy. You be nice to Kathy. Or maybe I should be like, Kathy, be nice to Brian because maybe he gets the brunt of it. I don't know. But here's the thing. I'm not picking on anyone. But what I have found is when I sit with sponsees, and this is how I sponsor others, is I sit with them as they write their fourth step. And I want to point something out. I have never had a sponsor ever do that with me. And I point that out because guess what? We can do things a little bit different. What I found is if I was like, go do your fourth step, I know this is going to be a shock. I know, just brace yourselves. It didn't get done. And then they started avoiding me. What? I know. I'm as shocked about this as all of you. But that's what my experience would be. but and this is why I do it. I am a very efficient alcoholic. I'm a very efficient drug addict. My life was burnt to the ground quite quickly. I'm all about efficiency. I don't want to do things that are ineffective. But what I found is when I sit down with somebody and we go through this process, I shared this last week, but we will get columns 1, column 2, and column 3, all of them done in an hour, maybe 2. So in one setting, yeah, some of you are like, I intimately am familiar with how quickly this goes. It does not take long. And when I sit, it's just that hand holding because I know believe me, I know what it's like when we're staring down a 4th step and I'm worried and I'm confused. I was given directions and I was doing my best to listen, but also I was disassociating. I'm sure no one's had that when they've been given 4-step directions where they're like, woo, 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 like way back here, and not like, I don't remember. And I don't have the courage to ask my sponsor to explain it for the 4th time, because I still need to look like I'm somewhat competent. And I got that thing where I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know how to get started. And there, I will promise you, there is nothing more interesting than getting rid of like expired soup cans when we've got inventory to write. It is like I will do anything but write that inventory. And part of what I do is I will sit with them as they do it, and in that moment, in like an hour, we're in the middle of 4. And all the things that I was worried about, all my questions are answered, like it's just we're there. We're there. And that's what I do. I'm not saying that's what anyone has to do, but I'm just saying that's what I do. And I do it because it works. All right. And the whole point of that was we can be thorough and we can be quick at the same time. I've got to do it and I've got to go hard. I went hard at my drinking. I went hard at my drug use. I got to go hard at my inventory. Woo! I know, I know. Oh, so, and let me take some time to announce the other big book studies that other people do that are more normal. Uh, Not this one, though. So, we went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, so when we're done the first 3 columns, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. Because column 1 is the big stinky jerk. Column 2 is their stinky jerk behavior. And column 3 is how their stinky jerk behavior affected me. So, yeah, I can see that they are wrong. And it is apparent. And it says to conclude, so to come to the conclusion that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. Oh, calling us out. Rude, rude. But here is the result. See, if I am living in that place where they're wrong and I'm right, there is nowhere to go. There is no solution in me being right. I'll tell you why, because I can't just be right. I need to be right with an audience. And that audience, I need universal consensus on my correctness. Y'all know what I'm saying? I can't just have a little bit like right. It's got to be all the way. So there's nowhere to go. So uh, it says the usual outcome. So me being defended, me being guarded, me being stuck in the but I'm right is this. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us. So it didn't even keep me safe. It didn't even prevent me from getting hurt. And we stayed sore. So not only do I continue to get hurt, but I continue to have the resentment. Sometimes it was remorse. So sometimes we had a feeling that we did wrong. And then we were sore at ourselves. So we're feeling sorry for ourselves. We feel hurt. And it says, but the more we fought and tried to have our own way. And this is a callback to the 3rd step. You guys remember the actor trying to play the director, me sitting in the delusion of the God chair, me playing with that controller that's not plugged in. The more I fought and tried to have my own way, the worse matters got. Me trying to win, me trying to show up as the boss, it didn't work. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. Do we relate to that, like maybe I won, but at what cost? You know what I mean? Maybe I won the fight, but at what cost? And if you guys know what it's like, maybe you're not as petty as I am, but little Miss Petty over here. You know when you have had that like drag out, and I'm going to say knock down, drag out. I don't mean physically, but you know those drag out fights, and then the person is like, "Fine, you win." And then you don't really feel that sense of victory. You know what I mean? And you still kind of feel the like, you know? And I know no, you guys don't know what that's like because you're all delightful little saints. And I'm just this like curmudgeonly gremlin of chaos. But it does not work. And the victor only seemed to win. There was loss and pain and suffering and harm that was caused. Now, this next paragraph is important and it's illuminative. And actually, on Friday, and we were talking about this on Friday, where we were talking about do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Sorry, my brain just reminded me of that. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And some of y'all know what is your immediate response? If I'm right, I am happy. That's not necessarily the case. Because if you're coming to me, you're right, but miserable, because I am the last resort of the truly hopeless. Truly. So, no, that's not the case. But also, I heard it. We were talking about this on Friday, but I heard this put in a way. I was in a meeting one time, and there was somebody that was saying, you know, the old saying, "Do you want to be right?" And I was listening. It was on Zoom, and I'm like, yeah, I want to be right or happy. And she said, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be kind?" And that called me out. Do I want to be right or do I want to be kind? Do I want to be right or do I want to be loving? Do I want to be right or do I want to be an agent of God? And that shook it up for this little weirdo. So I was gonna say this little crackhead. You can tell I've been doing stuff in spiritual cartel because I'm like, woo, yeah. So it goes on to say, it is plain that a life, and I want to say a life, not an alcoholic life, not an addict life, a life, any life, a life, which includes deep resentment, leads only to futility and unhappiness. And that futility is that sense of like the meaninglessness of life. You know, it's futile, it's pointless. Holding on to a deep resentment leads only to that pointlessness of life and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, that we allow ourselves those deep resentments, do we squander, which is to say, do we waste the hours that might have been worthwhile? And I want to point that out. That is for non-alcoholics. That is for non-addicts. That is for people who do not have the illness that is laid out in this book, whatever your manifestation is. That is for any human being on earth. Any human being on earth who holds on to deep resentments will find a life of futility, will find a life of unhappiness, and will waste the precious moments that we have in the here and now. It'll be wasted. And I think we all know, we all probably have somebody in our life who is absolutely, that deep, decades long grudge that they have spent. No, don't you be pointing to Kathy, Brian. You be nice. She'll have to put you on her inventory. I'm sure you're already there. Spoilers. But those people in our lives that have those decades long grudges that aren't an alcoholic, that aren't an addict, and it wastes the joy of the moments that they could have had. And it eats them away. It's not going to kill them, but it's just going to ruin their lives slowly. But now that's for not us. This is for us. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, I want to really point out that maintenance and growth. Because of course, I need to maintain that spiritual experience. But here's the thing, some of you know what it's like to have to maintain a car. And that's not exciting. Maintenance, oh boy, an oil change. I can't wait. Maintenance sounds lame. It sounds not interesting. But the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, we get to grow that spiritual experience. I get to grow it. I get to seek something that is deeper. I don't have to settle okay, the best I can hope for is an education. No, I don't have to settle. I get to have more. I get to seek more. But I've got to go after it. I just like I went after a drink, just like after I went after a crack hoot. I've got to go after this thing. And just like with a drink, I could not stay well on one. I could not stay well on one drink. I cannot stay well on one experience. I need more. So I've got to deepen this thing. So, but with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. What it is saying, it is infinitely fatal. We are not human beings who have the luxury of having resentments. That does not mean that we try to will away our resentments and I'm not angry, it's fine, I'm not bothered, because we know what that's like. That doesn't work. We're going to get resentments because we are human beings, and that is a part of the human condition, but I need to take the action to get free of them. And as desperately as I need to take the action to get free of them in the fourth step is the same necessity, the same desperation that I need to get free of them in the 10th step and in the 11th step. So in my 10th step and in my evening review, I do not have the luxury of living with resentments. It is infinitely grave, which is to say infinitely fatal. And if we didn't trust me, and I couldn't catch if Rob put the definition of grave in the chat, and you didn't trust Rob, which is wild. How did you not trust Rob? He is the best. We just love him. But if you didn't trust either of us, here it says, we found that it is fatal. Again, we're reiterating that this is fatal. The luxury of having resentments, man, I don't have that luxury. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the capital S Spirit. See, we're going to get into fears in a while. We'll get there when we get there. But I'm sure we've all heard that saying that fear and faith can't live in the same house. And for what it's worth, I don't know if that's my experience. We're going to talk about that then. For me, to have faith, I have to have fear, because if I don't have fear, then it's just trust. But here's what I know from experience. Serenity and self-centeredness cannot live in the same house. I cannot feel the presence of God and the light of God and be pissed off and angry and judgmental. And no, it's not a resentment page. I'm just a little frustrated. I can't feel that way and feel that same connectedness. And that's what I need. And that's what the purpose is. We need that connection, that light. And as you guys know, I love the metaphor of God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe as light. Because light is not simply what I see. Of course, we can see light. But light is also the way in which I see. Light is the vessel through which I see. And some of you guys know, if you've done some inventory, you write some inventory, your childhood got better, childhood didn't change, right? Family got better, family didn't change. The jerks on the freeway, they got better. They didn't start driving better, you know what I'm saying? But how I see them changes. The light through which I see has changed everything, even if the external conditions have not changed. And that is the purpose of steps 4 through 9. I've been talking a lot lately about how 4 through 9 is the engine, the vehicle that gets me from the hopelessness of step 1 to an awakened spirit. The 4 through 9 is to clear away the stuff that is inside of me that is blocking me from this power. I've got to clear away the resentments. I've got to clear away the selfishness. I got to clear away the fear and the guilt and the shame. I've got to clear all of that away. And when I'm able to do that, I'm able to be in the sunlight. And you see, when I am cut off from that light, that power, It says the insanity of alcohol returns. The insanity of alcohol is the mental obsession. I have that thought that tells me this time I can do it. This time will be different. Nobody will ever know. And we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. And again, a relapse for an alcoholic, a relapse for an addict, a relapse for somebody whose symptoms matches lack of control, lack of choice. A relapse is inevitable. It is not a matter of if I relapse, but when. I will relapse. And it says, with us, to drink is to die. Now, I'm going to say, and of course, there is the very literal death. Alcoholism, addiction, whatever the manifestation that brings you to this all-inclusive study is, what I want you to know is it is fatal. And we know that it is fatal, but it is also important to understand that there are many types of death. There is not just the literal death where we stop and we take our last breath. There are many deaths that happen for somebody like me up until I take that last breath. There's a death of who I am, the death of my goals and dreams. There's God bless him, there's a gentleman in the city that I live in, and he is, man, his spirit, he is an angry, you can feel it radiating off him. And he's like, I know all these contradictions in the big book, I drank again and I didn't die. And I didn't point them out, buddy. There's more than one type of death. Well, he was not going to be receptive to it. You know what I mean? But there are many types of death that are just as painful, if not more, than the last breath that we will inevitably take as the result of this illness. So, if we were to live, we had to be free of anger. I need to be free of it. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. Now, grouch, that's got a pretty contemporary sort of definition, and I also think of Oscar. If you're wondering, I was talking about when I was a little girl. It wasn't my horse, but I had a horse that I just loved. His name was Chuck, and he was a grouchy boy, and I just loved him. Hey, Oscar, you're no grouch. We love you so much. But my favorite Sesame Street character was Oscar the Grouch. My favorite Winnie the Pooh was Eeyore. This was going to set a very dangerous trajectory for the rest of my life, and some of my dating patterns just going to throw. I can fix them. Just that. But grouch is like, we can't live in that way. We need to be free. But the brainstorm. Now, we might think of brainstorm through the modern lens of, like, we're just having a, in corporate speak, we're going to brainstorm. Let's get some synergy, like throwing out ideas. And I will say there are people that are dying behind the analysis Dell was the cookie master. The people that were dying behind the analysis paralysis, the overthinking. And, I have a sponsor that talks about, it is not that I thought too little. It was that I thought too much and acted too little. I've got to take that action. But in the 1930s, we got Big Bird. I love that we got all the different little characters. I love it. It's so good. But what we're talking about, in the 1930s, the word brainstorm meant a sudden outburst of anger. Now, I know you guys, just the most loveliest. You guys have no idea what it's like to lose your temper at anyone. Not you. But that's what we're talking about. That grouch, to be in a bad mood, to be curmudgeonly, which is not helpful. That's a page word to describe a word. But that brainstorm is that anger, that explosion of anger. Oh, wonderful. We got a question. How do we get how do you get rid of, gosh, I'm having a hard time reading today. How do you get rid of the deep-rooted childhood trauma? We will talk about that in just a moment. So if you just sit tight, we're going to talk about that. So we had to get free of the grouch and then the brainstorm. It says they may be the dubious luxury of normal men. Oh, we got the dubious luxury of normal men. But for alcoholics, these things are poison. Now I'm going to throw something out. Is there anyone here? Whoever, I know. I don't think any of you guys would do this. But anyone here ever drink at somebody or use drugs at somebody? Oh, that'll show you. Oh, you guys know. That'll show you. I will ruin my life. That'll teach you, right? These things are poison. It's like literally a resentment. That expression, it's drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. It is poisonous. We need to get free of it. Now it says we turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. Yeah, absolutely. Call me a drunk. I'll show you. I'll get drunk at you. Yeah, that'll learn you something. So we turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. So columns 1, 2, and 3. What it is going to do, it's going to lay down the foundation for our future. We're going to unlock the door of a brand new world, a brand new way of life, and it happens now. And it says we were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. So what we're talking about, a completely different angle. 180, not 360, because then you're in the same spot. 360 is a full circle. 180, we're going to see this thing from a completely radical angle. It says we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. If we see that third column in the depth of resentment, yes, it had us. It said in that state, the wrongdoings of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. And as we come to the inventory process, I don't want to spoil it for you, but 99.9% of our resentments, guess what they are? Fancied. I living in self and self-will set the ball rolling. I stepped on your toes and I didn't see that I stepped. All I see is your retaliation. What I will find is most of them are fancied. But there are some that are real. And this is where we're talking about that childhood trauma. That childhood trauma. That when we talk about, when we're going to get into the fourth column, when we look at, what was our mistakes? Where did I make a decision based on self? That's not where we're looking. But we desperately, desperately need to be as free from that resentment that owns us as we do, the guy at the bar that we stole from, and then he got mad that he caught us stealing. You know what I mean? I need to be as free from all of them, because it doesn't matter if it's justified or not, it will still kill me. Just like the doesn't matter whether if I could justify the drink, it will still kill me. So what do we do? And actually, I'll, just because I'm aware I'm a little short on time, so I'll talk about what do we do with things like childhood trauma. What we're going to talk about is what I like to talk is the 3.5. Before we do any, and I mean any, fourth column, we say a prayer. The 67 prayer, the sick man prayer, that prayer for that person. Now, there are going to be, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, some ones where we need some more prayers, some more spiritual actions to give us that spiritual elbow grease. But when we come to that fourth column for childhood trauma, we're going to take a very different angle. We're going to take the angle of what happened after. So there was nothing we did. There was nothing that we did that caused it. There was nothing that we did that was our part in that sort of way, or our mistakes in that sort of way. The angle that we took is after. So after, did I drink at it? Did I use drugs at it? And this is really common, did I re-victimize myself with it? Did I go out and put myself in those same situations? Did I avoid seeking help for it? Did I use it as justification to burn down my life and hurt those around me? And that's where we start. There are times where we can go a little bit deeper with childhood trauma, and there's times where we can't. A lot of times when people are asking me about my sponsorship style, they get very frustrated because I sponsor in the same way that I budget. Brian, you know what's coming, vibes. And I'm very sorry if you work as an accountant, because that has got to be frustrating. Vibes, just the vibes. But what I do is I go as far as the person that I'm working with is willing to go. So if we're able to see, okay, the first prompt that I always use in the fourth column, I don't start with this prompt when we're looking at childhood abuse. At childhood abuse, I look at, what happened, in terms of after. But if we can get there and we can go maybe just a little bit deeper, one of the places I look to go just a little bit deeper is the prompt, have we done those things? Now, I'm not saying that we've abused kids, but have I crossed boundaries of others? Have I hurt others? Can I start there? Right. And I just, based on their willingness to go deeper, sometimes they can't, and that is okay. I'm really big on meeting people where they're at and helping lead them to where they need to go. And so that, if it's like, I can't go any deeper than that, that's cool. That's cool. I'll meet you there. That's more than enough. My first inventory, that was where I could go. And then my next, I went deeper, and the next I went deeper, and the next I went deeper. Actually, I'll share some stuff. I was just like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. No, we'll do it. We'll do it. I had a sexual assault, and my first inventory, looking at my sexual assaults, the furthest that I could go was I smoked crack at that a whole bunch, and that, you know what I mean. I didn't. Yes, exactly. Forgiving is not condoning. But I used a whole lot of substances at that. That was the furthest that I could go. But then I was able to go a little bit deeper. The next time I did some inventory, again, I didn't have anyone hand holding me through the process, which is why I love to work with others and intensively work with them, because I was doing it on my own and I'm like bumping into me. You know, the second time I wrote inventory on it, what I could see was I could see that, like, I didn't deserve it. It was not deserved based on the lifestyle that I was living or anything like that. But the reality is that an 18-year-old girl living on the streets of Calgary, it is more likely for those things to happen. And I was able to go that far. Now, another inventory, what I was able to see, there was a moment where before that had happened, I always say the gentleman, and people are like, you're a little loosey-goosey with that word. But the gentleman, we'll just say the guy, what he had done is he had threatened another person with a weapon before the assault. And in that moment, he then looked at me and he was like, I bet you want to leave, don't you? If you're wondering, the answer to that is, yep, I'm good. Peace out. But the response, there was something in me. And it's a thing that is still in me today, that I need to be seen as tough and strong and brave. And I didn't walk away. Again, it doesn't mean I deserved it. It doesn't. No worries. Thank you so much for coming. It doesn't mean that I deserved it. It should have happened. You know, he is absolutely in the wrong for his behavior. But I got to see things at a deeper level and see a deeper truth. And it's okay if you're not able to go to those deeper levels about that same thing. That same thing will continue to cause me harm today. And so that's why I'm big on, man, we're never done this inventory thing. We get to keep going. So what we're going to do is we're going to pray. We're going to do that spiritual elbow grease. And we go to where we can go in the fourth column. But also, if we need outside help for some of those things that have happened, that is more than okay. It's more than okay. But I'll also let you know, I still have to do this, because I was not really effective at any sort of outside help that I was doing when I was like continuing to relapse and that sort of stuff. So just going to throw that out there as well. So it says, I know I'm stretching it for time. Somebody, as me, is not doing a good job at time. Also me. So it says, the wrongdoings of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? So again, I need to be free of these things. We saw that these resentments must be mastered. But how? I need real freedom from them, not a temporary relief, but how? And this is interesting. We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. So here's the thing. Oh yeah, I'm doing terrible for time. So I'll wrap up with this idea. Bear with me. So I cannot be free of the obsession of the mind on my own power. Actually, let me take it a step back. On my own power, I can do nothing to stop the allergy of the body. Because once I take a drink, for me, who's also an addict, once I take a hoot, man, I am gone. I take a mind-altering substance, bye, I'm gone. There's nothing that I can do about that. And you'd say, well, yeah, don't take the first one. But I come to find out I have the obsession of the mind. I have a thought that compels me to go back again and again and again to that first drink, drug, hit, hoot, compulsive behavior. And I raise all of my willpower and all my defenses, and there is nothing that I can do to stop me on my own power from picking up that first drink or that first drug. And I need God's help. And then we have a look in the second step, and in the second step, we begin to really look at that spiritual malady, the restless, irritable discontent, the emptiness, the loneliness, the bedevilments on page 52, feeling of uselessness, self-pity, a prey to misery and depression, and I can't do anything about those on my own. And in the third step, I begin to really see the selfishness and self-centeredness that are driving me. And it talks about that I cannot overcome self with self. And I am at this moment staring down the barrel of the resentment, the inevitability of the relapse that will happen if I can't get free of it. And I can't do it on my own power either. I need God. And so next week, we're going to talk about how we give more and more of ourselves to the unconditional love that is the power that is available to each and every one of us. That's what we're going to talk about next week. How do I let God move in these resentments? Because I can't get free of it on my own. And with that, I'll wrap up the meeting. 1 minute after is not bad for me. Thanks for sticking it out. We can wrap up with the Serenity.